is the Trojans and Backdoors. So we'll talk a little bit about what the Trojans do, and in your book, there's some pretty interesting exercises that we'll go through, and I think we'll have a little bit of fun with this domain right here. So if you have questions, let me know. Otherwise, we'll just go through and talk about this. This is 180 in Cybeck's book here, 180. So give me an example here of what you feel is a Trojan. And usually there's one thing that people usually will answer when I ask that question. Like when you hear the word Trojan, well, actually probably a couple of different things. What do you think of usually historically? Trojan horse, right? So in the story of Troy, right? And I know the ladies usually refer back to the Brad Pitt movie where he's, who is he in there? Achilles? He's Achilles, and he's basically, that's the whole story. Is they send the horse into the city, and then inside the big horse, there's a bunch of soldiers that they can't penetrate the wall, so they send them a present, and then once they're inside the wall, everybody jumps out of that Trojan horse and then attacks from within. And that's the same sort of concept with these, and that's why they're actually named Trojans, is because they rely on a large part of either social engineering, or they may start to infect a system by enticing someone to download an infected program or wrapper. And we talked a little bit about that Ashley Madison download file, and how is there any other thing, I mean, from either somebody's perspective, whether or not you're on that list, or hey, is my spouse on that list? Is there any other thing that could be more enticing to someone than a list like that says, hey, click on me as quick as possible because you want to actually see if somebody's on there, right? Or I guess, curiosity kills the cat with, hey, who else is on that list that I know? Let me just scroll down there and look at the last names and see who is on that list, So it's just kind of interesting, something like that, where you have a list of allegedly cheaters, right? I guess they signed up for that. But, something like that, where you may be able to download something, and from that, it could hide with an infected wrapper. We talked a little bit about shrink wrap code. Certainly a Trojan would be something like that, where it's hidden. You don't see the nefarious thing that's underneath it. They talk a little bit about some of the commonly used ports that are in a Trojan. And, in the chapter here, usually the monikers that's associated with it, they provide covert access to a victim system. And it's quite clever. When we look at the different words, overt and covert, what do you guys think those words mean? What are the difference between the two?
Overt, you know about it. Yeah. Covert, you don't.
All right, so overt usually is a communication path or channel that is used to send information or perform other actions. A covert is kind of like the spy movie, right? It's a path that is used but does in a way that is illegitimate or supposed to be impossible. So you violate the security policy if you use a covert channel. It's allowed here, and I'm reading from page 185 or 195 in your book. So how do we know? We know that there's something going on. Maybe there's an anomaly on the system. How do you know if you have a Trojan? My goodness, some of these look like poltergeists, to be honest with you. And having read and done a little bit of research on this in the past, your CD drawer may open and close, which is kind of neat. I mean, if you just think about it, it sucks that you would have that as a virus or a Trojan. Your computer screen changes. Maybe you've seen that little Trojan that gets on there. It says click here to close, and then as soon as you put the mouse over event, it moves over here. Put the mouse over event, and it moves there, and it keeps moving, so you can't actually get rid of it. Screen settings change by themselves, although Windows, that's something totally different. The screen display changes by itself in Windows. Documents print with no explanation here on 194. Mouse pointer disappears or it moves in unexplained ways. Start button disappears. Is this making sense to any of you guys? Any of you guys ever seen anything like this before? So it's quite interesting. And why do attackers use Trojans specifically is to try to get information from a victim. And that could be your personal identifiable information, or maybe in this particular case, in the real world scenario here that you could go and read more about, this guy down here, it was trying to get more information on his ex-wife. And he actually he created this Trojan, installed a backdoor, and basically ended up going to jail because he ended up doing this, trying to get, access to some interesting pornography that was on a laptop or a desktop somewhere. So that's really what the Trojans are, and that context and that of the Trojan comes with this term wrapper, and the wrapper then, when it gets installed, could beacon back to an opening site somewhere that's on another machine. And one of the interesting things is that it could be anything. Could be anything. We could have a port that's open on one machine that all we're doing is waiting for somebody to come back, and that's exactly what things like Metasploit and the Metasploit framework do. Is it actually waits, it listens, and then you use a remote code to be able to beacon back and then connect back while that thing is listening to it. So the term wrapper, we talked a little bit about this earlier. It's really a way that you can hide your virus, your worm, your Trojan. But there's an interesting thing here, and we're going to talk a little bit about some of these different things here, and with specifically the Trojans first, and then we'll get into what's the difference between the virus and the worm. But here you can see that 196 in your book, there's different types of Trojans. One is called a rat. How apropos here, it's a remote access Trojan. And one of probably the most popular of those is this thing called back orifice. And it's a play on the word for back office you may have heard of. I think before Office came into play, that was one of the first programs for trying to manage word processing. And you can look down here at the bottom of 196. Back orifice has a few different things that it goes through. UDP 31337 or 31338. So if you do a netstat and you see that port open on your system, good chance that you got the back orifice. However, nowadays I would think modern day antivirus would probably catch something like that, unless you just don't have antivirus running. Look at some of the names of these things as you go down the list here. They're quite interesting. One is called Beast. Another is called Deep Throat. Going back to back orifice. How about Donald Dick or Loki? Anybody remember Loki from Thor? Yeah. And the Norse god of mischief, you said? Look over here on the other page, Whack-A-Mole. Hey, I got a girlfriend. She's running on 21.5.44. Master's Paradise. Wow. Interesting, some of these. So here on the next page, we're going to actually get into an exercise to see how we can detect some of these Trojans. And that's going to start with using the netstat command.